Sufia asks me on Quora, when you trade register your logo, so you also put your slogan with it? I'm Andrei Mincov, the founder of Trademark Factory, and here's my answer to Sufia's question. Let me start by rephrasing this a little bit just to make sure I understand the question correctly. My understanding is what you're asking is this. When you register your logo as a trademark, is that a good idea to put not just the logo in your trademark application, but the logo and the slogan together in a single application? That's how I'm reading the question, and that's the question I'm going to answer. No. Ideally, you don't want to combine the logo and the slogan into a single trademark application. It will save you a little bit of money on the services and on the fees and the government fees, but in the end of the day, instead of having two really strong trademarks, you may end up with one that's really weak. Remember, the trademark is never the goal. The trademark is a means to an end, right? It's either about building an asset or about giving you the legal tools to stop others from copying you. Of course, sometimes it's both, but it's never about you getting that certificate and like, oh, I got a trademark, that's great. So you can't really do everything you could do if you had those brands separately trademarked in terms of enforcement. Because if somebody were to come up with a somewhat similar image, but without the tagline, they could get away with that. Or similarly, if somebody copied your slogan, maybe change it a little bit, but it would be still recognizable, but used a completely different imagery with it, again, you'd have a hard time enforcing that combined trademark against them, which is why we always recommend, if you can, file them as two separate trademarks. Now, there are two exceptions. The first exception is the budget. If all you got is the funds to file one trademark application, and you hope that very soon as your business grows, you would go back and file those brands as separate trademarks, that could be a viable strategy. It's better to file a trademark that covers something than to file nothing, right? The combined application may, cover you in 60-70% of the cases, which is still much better than zero. So if all you can do is do one as a combined mark. Nothing wrong with that. Just know that it's a temporary solution and that you will have to upgrade your trademarking portfolio to separate trademarks pretty soon. The second reason to file it as a combined mark has nothing to do with your budget. It has everything to do with registrability of the separate elements. So if the logo by itself is not really trademarkable because there may be something similar, or if the tagline by itself is not really trademarkable because somebody else has got something kind of similar, or maybe you have those problems with both the name, the logo, the tagline. So sometimes putting everything together makes it distinctive enough for you to get away with it and actually have that trademark. So that could also be the strategy for you to use to get your trademark registered. But this is something that, like I said, is an exception, and it's an exception that you want to discuss with those who are going to be working on your trademark application just to make sure that it makes sense. So separate the two. Rule of thumb, ideally you want to file them as separate trademarks. If you can't, then you have to really look hard into, are you doing it because you don't have enough budget, in which case look at it as a temporary solution, or are you doing it because otherwise the separate elements would not be trademarkable? Akeem Cabarron asks me on Quora, do I need to ask permission from a company if I want to do a parody of their logo for profit? Here's what I'm known for saying. If you're not 100% sure, ask. And I don't mean ask an attorney. I don't mean ask your trademark agent. I mean, ask those whose intellectual property you're about to use. And it may be awkward with parodies, you may say. Well, guess what? L. Weird Yankovic, really well known for his parodies, it's okay. He asked permission every time he did a parody because he respected those on whom he made the parody, and two, he was willing to sell his parodies for profit. And he didn't want to deal with lawyers, he didn't want to deal with problems. He thought, look, I can make this into something that a lot of people are going to enjoy. It's not going to kill the market for the original work. And I could just come up to them and say, look, I really want to do this. I can show it to you. If you don't mind, we're just going to run with it. If he can do it, so can you. And will most brands be happy with your parody? Probably not. And then it just becomes a business decision as to what you're going to do with that. So legally, there are several lines of thought. Some say, well, parody is a valid exception, and as long as I'm not doing anything really bad, I should be able to get away with that. Some others say, no, parody is not an exception for trademarks, especially when you're doing it for profit. Really, the important question you should ask yourself also is, are you using this in any way to create perception with the public that you are authorized by or endorsed by or any way licensed by the owner of the brand you're parodying? If you're in the same space, if you offer similar products and services that the trademark is registered for, that could be a problem. So again, unless you know for sure that you can get away with it, whether for legal reasons or just for logistics reasons, maybe you don't think that this is going to go big enough for them to care and notice. Unless you're certain of that, don't use it unless you got their consent, until you got their permission. And look, this is not a purely legal answer, because again, there are situations that will allow you to get away with that. The question is it worth it? Is it worth the hassle? Is it worth the nerves that you're going to have to expend fighting over whether your parody falls under one of those exceptions? In most cases, I would say no. Jack asks me on Quora, can someone use the individual words of their multi-word registered trademark as trademarked words too? I wish I really understood what the question is, so I see there could be several possibilities. So let me quickly go through them. The first option, the first reading of this question that I have is, let's say somebody owns a trademark that has several words in it. And so the question is, can they use individual words from that phrase and put an R symbol next to them if all they got is a registration for the multi-word trademark? The answer is no. Your registered trademark gives you rights in connection with your trademark. If you trademark the phrase, then all you got is a trademark on the phrase. Sometimes you'd be able to enforce that against somebody else using maybe individual parts from your phrase. It's rare, but sometimes it happens. But it still wouldn't let you yourself put the R in a circle next to individual words if all you got is a big multi-word trademark. That's reading number one. Reading number two is, what if somebody else has a phrase trademarked and you just want to use individual words from it? Can you get away with it? Maybe. Can you trademark in a similar space? Maybe, again, depending on how unique those words are. So, like a good example is McDonald's, right? They got a tagline, "I'm loving it." Does it mean that they own individual words from it? No. Does it mean that they can put an R in a circle next to loving or I'm or it? No, right? They own it as a whole phrase, not as individual words that make it up. So if somebody else, let's say there was another restaurant and they wanted to use I'm in their business or it, would that be a problem? No, because again, McDonald's, all they got is a trademark on the phrase. They don't have trademark on individual words. But if they had a trademark on individual words, that would be a different story. So really, that's what this boils down to. How unique are those words, what you can do with them, and how the other side is using that word or that brand or that phrase that is reflected in your multi-word trademark. Now, I hope this answers Jack's question. And if it does, great. If it doesn't answer your question, Jack, comment below and just let me know what exactly you want to know. And for everyone else out there, if you got a question for me, write it down in the comments below. I read all your comments and I'll do my best to record a video just like this one, as long as you ask me a question about branding or trademarks. Now, if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe now to get notified whenever the next video goes live. And until then, I'll see you in the next video, right?